letter printed and signed, tucked inside my jacket pocket. I was ready to leave, but before I could speak, my manager fired me to save a few bucks. He handed me a check to leave a job I was already quitting, and in his haste, he handed me the keys to his destruction. You won't believe how a single signature cost this arrogant manager his entire career. Let me tell you how it went down. The red warning light on panel 7 was blinking again. It was 3:15 a.m. on a Tuesday, and I was the only soul in the entire plant. The Apex system was throwing another temperature variance alert, and if I didn't recalibrate the cooling circuits, we'd have 600 people showing up to a dead production line in 4 hours. My name is Harold Peterson, but everyone calls me Hank. I'm 53 years old, and for the last 15 years, I've been the senior plant operations engineer at Midwest Automotive Components. That's a fancy way of saying I'm the guy who keeps the machines running so 600 families can pay their bills. I pulled out my phone and checked the thermal readouts on the Apex interface, the system I built from scratch 10 years ago. It controlled everything: inventory flow, quality metrics, supplier coordination, customer delivery schedules. Without Apex, this place would shut down in 6 hours. With it, we saved the company $1.2 million a year in waste reduction and efficiency gains. The coffee in my thermos had gone cold hours ago, but I drank it anyway. My daughter Sarah had called earlier about her engineering tuition going up another $3,000 this semester. My ex-wife Linda wasn't exactly offering to help with the bills. Between the mortgage, the truck payment, and now this tuition hike, I was stretched thinner than sheet metal. That's why I'd been talking to that headhunter for months. A competitor in Michigan finally sent over an offer letter. 25% salary bump, better benefits, and they actually respected their engineers instead of treating them like expensive janitors. I'd printed the offer, signed it, and typed up my resignation. 2 weeks notice, professional and clean. I finished the recalibration and headed for the exit. Tomorrow morning, I'd walk into Trevor Whitman's office and hand him my letter. Trevor was our new VP of Manufacturing Operations, brought in 8 months ago with his shiny Northwestern MBA and zero manufacturing experience. He was 32 years old and looked at guys like me like we were outdated equipment ready for the scrap heap. The parking lot was empty except for my Ford F-150. I'd bought it used 6 years ago, and it still ran like a Swiss watch. Unlike some of the management around here, I drove home thinking about freedom. No more 3 a.m. emergency calls. No more watching Trevor treat skilled workers like they were disposable. No more explaining why you can't just optimize a production line with a spreadsheet. The alarm went off at 6:30, but I was already awake. I'd been staring at the ceiling, rehearsing what I was going to say. Trevor, I need to discuss my future with the company. Direct, professional. I put on my best shirt and checked my jacket pocket. The resignation letter was there, crisp and ready. For the first time in months, I didn't have that knot in my stomach about walking into that building. The plant was already humming when I arrived at 7:45. 3 shifts, 24/7 operation. The morning crew was streaming in, lunchboxes in hand, talking about the Tigers game. Good people, hard workers. They deserved better than what was coming. I badged in and walked to my office. The Apex monitors showed all green. Production efficiency at 97.2%, which was outstanding for a Tuesday morning startup. I checked my email and organized my files. At 9 a.m. sharp, I'd knock on Trevor's door. At 8:55, my phone rang. Trevor Whitman, internal line. Hank, can you come to my office now, please? Sure, I said, my heart skipping a beat. He was early. And Hank, bring your laptop and your access card. The line went dead. I sat there, staring at the phone. There's only one reason a manager asks you to bring your access card to a meeting. I grabbed my laptop bag and walked to the administrative wing. Trevor's office was all glass and steel, designed to look important. When I knocked, he called me in. He wasn't alone. Patricia Caldwell from HR was sitting in the corner chair, looking uncomfortable. Have a seat, Hank, Trevor said without looking up from his computer. He was wearing a suit that probably cost more than my truck payment. I sat down, keeping my hand near the jacket pocket where my resignation letter waited. So Hank, Trevor began, finally making eye contact. We've been reviewing our operational structure, and we've decided to move in a different direction. I nodded slowly. Okay, we're implementing a new automated management system. Cloud-based, more efficient, and frankly more cost-effective than maintaining legacy personnel. Legacy personnel? That's what 15 years of keeping this place running had earned me. Because of this restructuring, Trevor continued, your position is being eliminated. Effective immediately. He paused, waiting for me to panic. I just sat there, my fingers brushing the resignation envelope. However, Trevor said, leaning forward like he was doing me a favor, because we value your years of service. We're offering a generous severance package. He slid a thick document across his desk. 4 months full salary plus a $25,000 lump sum if you sign today. But this offer is only valid if you sign now. If you walk out that door without signing, you get the standard 2-week severance. I looked at the papers. The formatting was messy, fonts all over the place. It looked like something pulled from an old filing cabinet. Do you mind if I read this? I asked. Trevor checked his expensive watch. You have 10 minutes. I have a conference call with corporate. I started reading. It was titled Voluntary Separation and General Release of Claims. The severance amounts were there, but something felt off. The language was old-fashioned, and there was a 2003 copyright date in the footer. The intellectual property section caught my eye. It talked about physical inventions and hard copy schematics, nothing about software, algorithms, or digital systems. It looked like a contract written for a factory foreman 20 years ago, not a systems engineer in 2024. Trevor, I said, pointing to a clause, this language about proprietary work, it only covers physical inventions, right? Trevor barely glanced at it. Standard boilerplate. Look, Hank, do you want the money or not? I'm trying to be generous here. I thought about the Apex system, pure software, cloud-based architecture. Never patented because Trevor always said patents were expensive. The contract defined company property as physical devices and hard copy plans. Nothing about code or digital intellectual concepts. Okay, I said quietly. I'll sign. Trevor actually smiled. Smart move, Hank. I signed Harold J. Peterson and dated it. I pushed the document back across the desk, and Trevor grabbed it immediately. Patricia will process this today, he said, standing up. Security will escort you out. Standard procedure. I handed over my access card. Make sure you read the Apex documentation, I said. It's very specific about maintenance protocols. Yeah, we'll figure it out, Trevor said dismissively. Goodbye, Hank. 20 minutes later, I was sitting in my truck in the parking lot, $25,000 richer and officially unemployed. But I wasn't feeling sorry for myself. I was thinking about my college roommate George Martinez, who'd become a corporate attorney. I called George on my way home. Hank, what's up, buddy? I just got fired, but they paid me to leave. I need you to look at a contract, bring it over. I'll take a look. George's office smelled like leather and success. He read the separation agreement twice, then looked up at me with a grin that reminded me why he'd been such a good poker player in college. Hank, he said slowly, tell me about this Apex system you built. It's software, pure code, controls the entire production line. Without it, the plant shuts down. George leaned back in his chair. And did they ever patent it? No. Trevor always said patents were too expensive. George started laughing. Hank, this contract is from 2003. The intellectual property language only covers physical inventions. Software is considered an unlisted intellectual concept under this wording. What does that mean? It means by paying you to sign this, they just transferred ownership of the Apex system to you. You don't just work on it anymore, you own it. I sat there stunned. Are you serious? Dead serious. And since they're using your software without a license, they're committing theft the moment that severance check clears. So what do? George pulled out a legal pad. We wait for the money to hit your account. Then we send them a cease and desist letter. They're about to learn a very expensive lesson about reading contracts. I drove home in a daze. When I walked through the front door, Linda was in the kitchen making dinner. We'd been divorced for 3 years, but she still came by when Sarah was visiting from college. You're home early, she said. Looking surprised, I got fired today. Her face fell. Oh, Hank, what happened? I explained the whole thing, the severance offer, the old contract, what George had discovered. Linda listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I'd always loved about her. So you might actually own that system you built, she asked. George thinks so. We'll know for sure when the money clears. Linda shook her head. You know, I always said that place didn't appreciate you enough. The check cleared at 2:47 p.m. the next day. George sent his cease and desist letter at 3:15, to whom it may concern. Our client, Harold Peterson, is the lawful owner of the Apex production management system currently in use at your facility. Your continued use of this software without proper licensing constitutes theft of intellectual property. We demand immediate cessation of all unauthorized use. I spent Thursday morning on my back porch, drinking real coffee and waiting. My phone started buzzing around 9 a.m. Trevor, I let it ring. Then Patricia. Then the main switchboard. They were cycling through every number in the building. At 9 a.m., Apex would try to run the morning production batch. But I'd built in security protocols after a cyber attack scare 5 years ago. Without my authorization codes, the system would lock down to prevent data corruption. By 10:30, my voicemail was full. Message 1, 9:15 a.m., Hank, it's Trevor. We have a small glitch with the morning batch, probably just a password reset issue. Call me back. Message 3, 9:45 a.m., Hank, this isn't funny. The production line is down. I need you to remote in and fix whatever you did. Message 5, 10:15 a.m. This is unbelievable. If you don't call back in 5 minutes, I'm having legal look into sabotage charges. Message 8, 10:50 a.m. Trevor's voice was shaky. Hank, look, maybe we can work something out. The line is down. People are being sent home. I need the access codes. We can discuss a consulting fee. I saved all the messages. George had told me to let the pressure build. The angrier he gets, the more mistakes he'll make, George had said, and mistakes are billable. At 11:45 a.m., my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. Mr. Peterson? This is Amanda Richardson, General Counsel for Midwest Automotive. We've received your attorney's interesting letter regarding the Apex system. I'm listening. We believe there's been a misunderstanding about intellectual property ownership. However, we recognize we have an operational crisis. We're prepared to offer you $150 per hour for up to 30 hours to restore system access and transition the codes to our IT department. I almost laughed. $150 an hour? That was barely more than I made as an employee. No, I said simply. Silence on the line, then Amanda's voice, tighter now. What exactly do you want, Mr. Peterson? A meeting tomorrow morning at 9 to Barone. My attorney will be present. We'll discuss licensing fees for my software. That's unacceptable. You're holding the company hostage. I'll see you at 900, I said and hung up. That evening, Sarah called from college. Dad, what's this about you owning the plant's computer system? Word travels fast in a small town. It's complicated, honey. But your tuition bill just got a lot easier to handle. The next morning, George and I walked into the main conference room at Midwest Automotive. The atmosphere was electric with tension. Judge Morrison Blackstone, the company CEO, was already there. He was 65 years old, built like an old-school steel worker, and his face looked like it had been carved from granite. When Judge Blackstone was unhappy, everyone knew it. Trevor was there too, sitting at the far end of the table. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie was crooked, and his hands were shaking slightly as he shuffled through a stack of papers. The confident MBA swagger was completely gone. Amanda Richardson sat to Judge Blackstone's right, a folder thick with legal documents in front of her. Patricia Caldwell was there from HR, looking like she wanted to be anywhere else in the world. Sit down, Judge Blackstone said without preamble. His voice could cut steel. George and I took seats across from them. George opened his briefcase and pulled out a single sheet of paper, sliding it across the polished conference table with the confidence of a man who knew he held all the cards. A licensing agreement, George explained calmly. Since Mr. Peterson owns the Apex intellectual property, Midwest Automotive will lease it back from him. $6,000 per month, plus a one-time consulting fee of $35,000 to restore access and train a replacement team. Trevor shot to his feet like he'd been launched from a cannon. That's insane. That's more than his salary was. We can't pay a contractor more than we paid him as an employee. You paid for his labor, George said, his voice steady as a rock. You gave away the product. Judge Blackstone's stare could have frozen hell over. He turned that laser focus on Trevor, and I actually felt sorry for the kid for about half a second. Trevor, Judge Blackstone said, his voice dangerously quiet, explain to me how saving $80,000 a year in salary just cost us $107,000 in licensing fees. Trevor's face went white as fresh snow. Sir, the contract was standard HR boilerplate. Legal should have reviewed it. Legal wasn't given time to review it. Amanda Richardson said coldly, you bypassed standard procedures to rush the termination through before 5 p.m. The contract was from 2003. Judge Blackstone continued, and his voice was getting quieter, which somehow made it more terrifying. You used a 20-year-old template to fire the engineer who runs our entire operation. Trevor was sweating now, despite the air conditioning running full blast. Sir, we were trying to modernize the workforce, move to cloud-based solutions. How's that working out for you? Judge Blackstone asked. Because last I checked, our entire production line has been dead for 18 hours. We've lost $216,000 in production today alone. Our clients are calling. Our suppliers are backing up inventory, and 600 workers got sent home without pay because you thought you could replace a 15-year veteran with a software subscription. I looked around the table. Everyone except Trevor seemed to understand exactly how badly he had screwed up. Amanda Richardson was taking notes, probably for his termination paperwork. Patricia Caldwell looked like she was trying to disappear into her chair. Judge Blackstone turned to me. Mr. Peterson, if we agree to this licensing arrangement, can you get production running immediately? I can get it running in 10 minutes, I said. I just need a laptop and Wi-Fi access. And the training for a replacement team? I can document everything over the next 90 days. Full system architecture, maintenance protocols, security procedures. Your people will be able to run it independently. Judge Blackstone nodded once. That's reasonable. He pulled out a fountain pen, one of those expensive ones that probably cost more than most people make in a week, and signed the licensing agreement without hesitation. Done, he said, sliding the paper back to George. Now fix it. I opened my laptop, connected to the building's Wi-Fi, and pulled up the Apex administrative interface. My fingers moved across the keyboard like they had thousands of times before. Override security lockdown. Reset authentication protocols. Reinitialize production batch processing. System restored, I announced. Production will resume in 5 minutes. The morning batch will complete by 11:30. Judge Blackstone nodded approvingly, then turned his attention back to Trevor. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Vor, Judge Blackstone said, we need to discuss your future, or rather your complete lack of one with this company. Trevor started stammering. Sir, if you'll just give me a chance to explain the strategic vision. Stop. Judge Blackstone held up one hand. You cost this company $250,000 in lost production. You exposed us to a massive legal liability by giving away intellectual property. And you did it all with a level of arrogance and incompetence that I find genuinely impressive. Amanda Richardson was writing furiously now. Patricia Caldwell had her phone out, probably texting security. But the worst part, Judge Blackstone continued, is how you treated a valuable employee. Mr. Pedersen here gave this company 15 years of service. He built the system that saves us over $1 million annually. And you treated him like garbage to be thrown out with the weekly cleaning. Trevor tried one more desperate play. Sir, I have a contract. There are performance metrics, severance requirements. Your contract has a gross negligence clause, Amanda Richardson said without looking up from her notes. Subsection 4C specifically covers actions that result in significant operational disruption. You're in material breach. Judge Blackstone stood up. Trevor Whitman, you're fired, effective immediately. Security will escort you out. And unlike Mr. Peterson here, you get exactly what the employee handbook specifies. 2 weeks basic severance in a box for your personal items. I watched Trevor's face crumble. The confident corporate climber who'd strutted into my office yesterday morning was gone. In his place sat a defeated 32-year-old who'd just learned that MBA theories don't always work in the real world. Sir, Trevor whispered, please. I made a mistake, but I can fix this. You can't fix stupid, son, Judge Blackstone said, and you can't fix what you don't understand. Get out of my building. Security appeared at the door. It was Carl Anderson, the head of plant security. Carl had been there almost as long as I had. He looked at Trevor with no sympathy at all. "Let's go, Mr. Whitman," Carl said firmly. As Trevor walked out of that conference room, flanked by security, I felt a satisfaction that was deeper than revenge. Justice had been served, and it tasted better than I'd imagined. Judge Blackstone turned back to me after Trevor disappeared through the doorway. "Mr. Pedersen, I owe you an apology. What happened here was inexcusable. I appreciated the gesture, but I wasn't looking for apologies. I understand business decisions have to be made," I said. "But they should be informed decisions." Indeed, they should. Judge Blackstone sat back down. "Now, about this training program for our team. What will you need from us?" We spent the next hour working out the details. I would come in 3 days a week for the next 90 days, documenting every aspect of the Apex system. They'd provide me with 2 junior engineers to train, guys who actually understood manufacturing, not fresh MBA graduates who thought they could manage what they'd never built. Amanda Richardson drew up a consulting contract that was ironclad. $6,000 monthly retainer, $35,000 upfront consulting fee, and full intellectual property protection. No more 20-year-old templates from dusty filing cabinets. When we finished, Judge Blackstone walked me to the elevator. "You know," he said, "I've been in this business for 40 years. Started on the floor, worked my way up. I've seen a lot of young hotshots come and go, thinking they can MBA their way through manufacturing. It's a different world now," I said. "Some things don't change. Good people, solid work, respect for experience, that still matters." He shook my hand. "I'm glad we worked this out, Hank. The company is better with you in it than without you." As I walked through the plant floor on my way out, word had already spread. Roy Stevenson, our lead machine operator, caught up with me by the main assembly line. "Hank, heard you showed those suits upstairs. What's what?" "Just worked out a business arrangement, Roy." Roy grinned. "Business arrangement, my foot. You saved our jobs, man." Trevor was talking about automating half the floor, bringing in robots. Now he's gone and you're back. That's justice right there. I drove home feeling lighter than I had in years. The $35,000 check was being processed. The monthly payments would start immediately, and for the first time since my divorce, I wasn't worried about money. Sarah called that evening. "Dad, everyone at school is talking about what you did. Is it true? You basically bought the company?" "Not quite, honey. But I own the software that runs it. It's like owning the recipe for Coca-Cola. Everyone needs it, but only you can make it. So my tuition is covered?" "Your tuition is covered. And your graduate school if you want it, and maybe a new car that isn't held together with duct tape and prayer." Sarah laughed. "I like my car. It has character. It has rust and a transmission that sounds like a coffee grinder. We're getting you something safer." Over the next few months, I settled into my new routine, 3 days a week at the plant, training Eddie Ramirez and Janet Phillips on the Apex system. Both of them were sharp, experienced, and actually asked intelligent questions instead of trying to impress me with buzzwords. The plant was running smoother than it had in years. Production efficiency hit 98.5%, which was unheard of in our industry. Judge Blackstone made sure everyone knew that the improvements came from investing in people and systems, not from cutting corners. Trevor, last I heard, he was selling insurance in Columbus. The manufacturing world is smaller than you'd think, and word gets around when you cost a company $250,000 in a day. His LinkedIn profile said he was exploring new opportunities in customer relationship management. Corporate speak for unemployed. I ran into Patricia Caldwell at the grocery store about 6 months later. She looked embarrassed when she saw me. "Hank," she said, "I need to apologize for what happened." I knew that contract was outdated, but Trevor insisted we use it. It worked out fine, Patricia. Better than fine. I should have spoken up. Lesson learned. Next time, trust your instincts. The best part of the whole experience wasn't the money, though that certainly helped. It was the respect. When I walked through the plant now, people nodded differently. Not just because I was the guy who kept the machines running, but because I was the guy who stood up to corporate bullying and won. Linda and I even started having coffee together on Sundays. Nothing romantic. That ship had sailed years ago, but a friendship based on mutual respect and shared pride in our daughter. You know, Linda said one Sunday morning, I always told you that place didn't appreciate you enough. They appreciate me now, I said. Funny how perspective changes when you're paying market rates instead of taking someone for granted. Sarah graduated summa cum laude with her engineering degree. At her graduation party, she pulled me aside. Dad, I want to thank you for showing me what real strength looks like. You didn't get angry. You didn't get revenge. You just used your brain and stood up for yourself. Sometimes that's all you can do, honey. But sometimes that's enough. I still have that resignation letter, framed on my office wall. Never delivered, never needed. It reminds me that sometimes the best exit strategy is not to exit at all, but to change the terms of engagement. Here's what I learned from the whole experience. Read every contract like your life depends on it, because sometimes it does. Never let anyone pressure you into signing something just because they're wearing an expensive suit. And most importantly, know your worth and don't be afraid to demand it. Companies will try to convince you that loyalty flows only one way, from you to them. But real loyalty is a two-way street. If they're not willing to drive down your side of the road, find someone who will. Trevor thought he was trimming dead weight when he fired me. He didn't realize he was cutting the main power cable. And when the lights went out, he learned a lesson that no MBA program teaches. Respect the people who actually know how things work. Because at the end of the day, experience beats education. Wisdom trumps arrogance. And the guy who built the system will always understand it better than the guy who thinks he can buy a replacement on Amazon. The real power in any workplace isn't your title or your paycheck. It's the irreplaceable knowledge in your head and the systems only you understand. So protect that knowledge like the gold mine it truly is. Never confuse being fired with being defeated, because sometimes getting pushed out the door is just the universe's way of showing you that you are worth a lot more than they were willing to pay.